Welcome to Weekly Ways to Better Days, episode 45. My willingness to experience the human experience. In this episode, Rachel joins me and discusses her story. By the time she was 13 years old, she had already had 5 suicide attempts, and she made the choice to live. And throughout her journey thus far, she has utilized that choice to live, to navigate her adversity. So I just want to say thank you so much to Rachel for joining us and sharing her very fruitful story and her healing and all of the ways that she has chosen to experience this human experience despite the adversity that has been thrown her way. So thank you for joining us. I look forward to hearing from you. Please leave comments and let me know what you think. Hello, Rachel. This is my friend Rachel, who I am so grateful that she is joining me today. So I met her actually in a coaching program where we did the problem with perfect from my friend Neva, who's a wonderful coach, and her spirit just lit me up. And I have actually had the pleasure of receiving Reiki from her, and I have had Reiki done multiple times, but I would have to say, Rachel, your Reiki was something out of this world, so special. I energetically felt so different, and the messages that I received were just I still have them on my mirror. It's been a year now, I think, almost probably close to the day that we did it. And just amazing. So Rachel, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about yourself. But that's my experience with you. And so I'm so grateful for you joining me today.
Amazing. Thank you, beautiful Katie. I love and adore you. And I'm so honored that we got to have a session together and that it's speaking to you and still on your wall. That's the cutest thing ever. So honored to connect with you. And I was immediately connected to you as well in that coaching program. I think we both just lit each other up, and it's like you've met someone that you've met all your life, yes. Or that you've known all your life. And that's how I felt with you immediately. And I'm just grateful to be here in this space with you and honored to be a part of this healing journey that you're sharing with everyone. So thank you for having me. I am, of course, Rachel. I am an emotional empowerment coach, as well as a certified Reiki master, an angelic healing practitioner, and a pro crystal healing, certified in crystal healing as well. And I'm also in a somatic therapy trauma certificate program at the moment to always learn more, always a student and trying to learn and expand and evolve and find a lot of joy and presence with where I'm at the same time. And so I also work full-time in an accounting job where I do payroll for a nonprofit clean energy transportation company. So it's pretty cool. It touches on my passions of veganism and environmentalism and stuff like that. So it kind of merges both passions together. And it's allowing me to kind of support myself right now as I'm building my business spiritually. Yeah. So really excited about that. And my business name is Radiance Healing as well. So that's a bit about me. And my kind of goal, I would say, in life is to help others find transformation in their lives through their emotions, through their traumas, through their healing journey, so that we can all, find our most happiest, fulfilled, and connected lives. And we all are deserving of that. So grateful to bring that into this space.
So good. Thank you so much. And thank you for being a light in this world. We need more people who have had these experiences and are willing to do the work and show other people that this is the human experience. We can have shitty, traumatic experiences and we can heal and move forward and we can help others do the same. So I just love knowing other people in this space, and I'm so grateful for you.
Yeah, thank you. And we need that narrative of we can heal and we can get through this, and that is the truth, and that's kind of my testament in this world and through my journey that I'll share about is just I can get through this, and I will, and I can heal from this, and that had to become my sounding board in my life, is that just that belief, that knowing, and that has kind of got me through everything, that I'm looking forward and honored to share about today. So my journey kind of started, at least my healing journey started around 12 and 13, when I just had severe depression. I had an angry father, a very disconnected family, a sibling who was going through depression, a sibling who was older than me, self-harming, going through depression as well. So that's kind of what I was seeing at that time, and that was kind of how I chose to handle my emotions as well. And so I went through multiple years of 12 and 13 self-harm. I had 5 suicide attempts by the age of 13 years old. Wow. And I went to a mental hospital because my parents, they wanted help for me. They are very loving people, no matter that they had their own difficulties and ways that mostly my dad would kind of project that back onto us, but still they did care about us, so I was given support, therapy and mental hospitals, things like that. And so basically at 12 and 13, I, after, not going into too many details, but after a lot of self-harm in a way that I didn't know how to get out of, I kind of told myself that the solution, right, for one, I made a commitment to live, for one, right? So I was like, I'm going to live. It didn't work this many times, so I'm meant to be here, and I need to choose that purpose now, and so there was that in the back of my head. And I'm young, right? I'm like 13, so I don't know what I'm doing in life. I'm like, I'm barely getting started on the whole wheel, So I was like, man, what do I do with this? And in my young mind, I said, okay, if I can just never feel sad or angry again, I can get through this and I can be okay. And at that time, that was the coping mechanism. That was what I needed to survive, right? Because I wasn't going to be able to survive without that coping mechanism. So sometimes we utilize things that, right, are a coping mechanism and necessary at one point, but maybe not something that's helpful forever. So that feeling of, okay, I'm going to never feel again, doesn't sound very healthy when I think about it now.
Yeah.
As coaches, we know.
13, it's like, this is what I need.
Right, exactly. And that's and the tears will flow, and that's just my authentic expression. And so I that was the solution, right? At that age, that was the coping solution of how to get through this. And so that's what I did. I wrote off those emotions and I never felt them. I got very heavy into drugs by age 14. Of course, I was trying to repress, right? What was coming up? My dad was still angry. Things were still happening. My parents divorced. I wanted them to, but still, that's a breaking of a family. Now I'm in 2 houses. I hate being with my dad, but I have to. I'm forced to be with him. So much was going on. So of course, I'm still trying to escape these emotions, but I'm convinced I can't feel them, right? So that, while it protected me for a while, it turned into a life of drug addiction, to be honest, because I was just so badly trying to escape the reality that I didn't want to confront, right? And it was starting to get so over my head, right? It gets to a point where you can't really repress anymore. It's going to spill out over you, right? So I had, many different back and forths with alcohol, at a very young age. My first AA meeting, I was 17 years old, because I was just like, I have to get help for this. I don't know what to do. But I was still very much in the space of not feeling. I wasn't understanding that yet, And so I went to jail many times. I had gotten into a really bad group of people that I was just like, okay, I'm just going to steal and I'm going to sell drugs and I'm going to do all this stuff because I don't care about my life or what happens to me. And I really didn't at that time. I didn't care what had happened because I was just trying to survive. Right. And at that time, I eventually, there was a lot of back and forth in between those years. And by 2015, I decided to go to rehab because I just could not quit alcohol. I was trying to quit weed. I just could not find stability and harmony in my life at that time. And I could feel it all spilling out, right? But I'm still not really feeling a lot at this point, right? So that's actually 2015. That's a lot of not feeling, many, many years, right? All the way back from when I was 13. So, and I'm 32 now. So that was quite a lot of years of not feeling anything. And I really didn't get it. My sibling would tell me like, they were really good at feeling, and I was really good at not feeling and doing the more philosophical things, right? Because those theories did help me of like, okay, I can find purpose in this. Okay, there's, you know, a reason for this, or just these different philosophies that did help me at the time. But my sibling was very much like, sounds like you gotta feel. Sounds like you feel
You're
something.
like,
Yeah.
no.
Like, and they would be like expressing their own feelings, and I would tell them, well, it sounds like you need to curb that emotion. And I was really, really good at giving advice just my whole life. I was really emotionally intelligent, very young, again, had been through many experiences, had a lot of compassion for people. So I was out there trying to give this advice at people, but telling them not to feel, because that's what worked for me. But it was only out of survival. I was not truly living at that time. And so it's like, God, like, these things, whenever they come up, I don't know how to handle them. So I just go drink, or I just go do whatever else, right? I was also very heavy in sex addiction and love addiction for a while. And so, or just having those behaviors that right, really took a lot of, they really consumed my life and my well-being. So, you know, just acting out, basically. I was reacting to every single experience I had, and I was reacting to avoid feeling, right? And so eventually in 2015, I go to rehab. And I remember they asked like right away, what's something you're most proud of? And I said to everybody, I get my little paper out, say to everybody, I'm like, I'm most proud of curing myself of depression. Laugh at that now, not because it is like a funny thing, but like, why did this girl think that she had cured herself of depression just because she had stopped feeling, right? And that is what hit me in rehab of like, oh my God, I've never felt any of this that I've really been through. I've just been avoiding it. The anger I had at my dad, the abandonment I felt from my father, the disconnection I felt from not really having a family that really connected well or anything, you know, so much right through my life. And it was all coming out. So the well freaking broke, right? Like the well had broke. And I know that that's what we all fear, right? We're like, as soon as I feel something, the well's going to break. And it might, you know what I mean? It's not always that way, but it might, right? And in that moment, it broke. And the most important thing was that I had a support system around me in that moment. And that was something I had cultivated over time, right? There were some practices I had cultivated by this time to at least have a network around me. I mean, I'm literally in rehab, so I literally have a support system around me, right? And so that realization in rehab was very, very pivotal for me of like, oh, like I have a lot of work to do. You know, I have a lot of healing within and feeling to do in order to get to a place of harmony and happiness in my life and actually live, right? And so I remember that in rehab, I was more suicidal than I'd almost ever been after that realization, which makes sense, right? That's just a repercussion of having repressed something for so long and then letting it out all at once. That's just what happens. And I, again, had made that commitment when I was younger of I'm not gonna leave. I'm here for a reason. I'm gonna stay. And that commitment I made to myself was critical. That was my lifesaver, my little whatever you throw out the thing into the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was saving me, you know, just that I had committed. Even at 13 years old, I still remembered that moment. I can see myself laying on the ground right now in my room, making that commitment to myself. That commitment lives within me every single day till this moment right now, and it always will. And it was the most important thing because in rehab, I really didn't want to be there anymore, you know, in life. And that was a really hard time for all of us, right? When we get to that point where it's like, God, I'm questioning wanting to be here. It's a very, very painful thing to feel. And you're not alone in that, right? We're not alone in that feeling. And for me, making that commitment to myself that I was going to stay here, that's what kept me here. Because I just kept hearing that in my head. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here. And so I did. It was really hard to get through rehab, but I was like, I'm going to get through this. I left a little bit early. I went to sober living after, but I left that a little early and, you know, went back and forth into drinking and different stuff. Just, I was still trying. I was still in my struggle zone. So then I always told myself, I've had a best friend since I was like 14 or 15. Their name is Brett. They go by they and them. So I'll be saying they and them for their pronouns. And I call them Gurfy. That's our name for each other, Gurfy, Gurfin. And Brett had struggled a lot with suicidal ideation, drug addiction, depression, all of the things, you know, that post-traumatic stress disorder, so much. They were queer, they were non-binary, their family did not accept them fully. You know, they still loved their child, but they were never really fully accepted. And my biggest fear always of my life was losing Brett to suicide. I had known in my body that it was probably going to happen, but I wasn't, you know, trying to put that energy out there. It was just an innate knowing, and they knew that for themselves too. And they told me time and time again, I just know it's going to happen. And I got very invested in their healing journey, very, very codependent in their healing journey. We even went to Codependence Anonymous together. And they do these little chip commitments where you pass out chips, you know, to like, oh, you got a month, you got 3 months. We did the commitment together. So everything we did, we like did it together. We were the joke of the group of like, y'all are so codependent. Of course you're not here, you know? So it was really a sacred time that I got to spend a lot of time with them in their healing journey towards the end. But they did eventually take their life and leave this earth. And that was one of the hardest things that I've ever gone through, because they were just a part of my soul. You know, they taught me about spirituality. They taught me about Reiki. Actually, that's who I learned, just learned about the concept of Reiki from. And so there were so many ways that they created a sacred imprint on my life that is just a part of who I am now. You know, they were so silly and so funny and so ridiculous too. So it was just, everybody knew us together as just the funniest, silliest. And, you know, when they passed, it was like, I lost that for myself, right? It was a very, very dark period of time of, again, not knowing how to live. You know, I just wanted to be with them. You know, it's like, I'd already had suicidal ideation in my life. And now it was kind of like, what was keeping me here now that that person had gone, right? And I heard that freaking commitment in my head. I heard it again, you know, I heard it. It's say, Rachel, you chose to be here. You know that you're going to be here. You chose to stay. You committed to yourself to stay. So that's exactly where you're going to be. It's right here. And I would just keep looking at my feet like, okay, I am right here, you know, and I'm just going to stay right here. And that journey led me back into drinking again. When Brett had passed away, and that was in February. They actually passed away on Valentine's Day of 2017. So that's a really hard day. And around their passing, they were staying at my house the 2 days prior to that because they were really mentally not well. Me and my sibling's name is Rex. They are non-binary as well. Me and my sibling were figuring out hospitals to take Brett to. You know, we were right about to get them into somewhere, you know. And then Brett said, oh, my medicine's at home. You know, they needed to go get their medicine. I said, I'll take you there. I go take them there. I think that they'll be okay at their house, you know, to grab the medicine. I had to go. My friend was actually having a baby. So it was like, I needed to go be with her. So I was at a hospital waiting for the baby. And I get, you know, the call from, basically what had happened is then I didn't go back and pick up Brett that night. I was supposed to pick Brett up. I was supposed to call them and pick them up. And I decided to go home because of my stupid temporary job that I had. I was like, no, I'm going to go home so I can get enough sleep for this job. I didn't even call them, which is very odd of me, right? And then then the next day I get a call. I'm back at the hospital for the baby, right? And I get the call from the mom of, hey, have you talked to Brett today? Da 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 da. They've been sleeping in their room all day, you know, the situation. And not to go too deep into this, but it was important for me to share because there's a reason of me really holding myself accountable for a lot of this, right? That was not healthy, like a blaming, shaming version of that. And so basically Brett passed. They had committed suicide. I was on the phone with the mom when she found Brett. So I'm hearing her reaction. It was a very traumatic moment. And obviously I go there immediately. And from that moment on, I thought it was my job to save Brett's life. I thought that because I didn't call them and I didn't go pick them up, that's why they died. And that there was a time before that I actually did save Brett's life. They told me that they were going to do something and then I had called and then they stopped. So it was, again, it was like integrated in my mind of like, I'm meant to save Brett's life, right?
Yeah.
Very codependent, very, very unhealthy way of thinking. And so when they passed, imagine that you feel so responsible for this person's life, which I know I'm not, again, we can go through the healing of this in a minute, but it was like, in that moment, I felt very much so at fault. I felt very much so like I had killed my friend and that I was the reason that they weren't here anymore. So it took me a lot to get through that. It took a very long time to get to a place where I was sane again, even just like functional, I basically was just drinking up throughout that whole year to get through it. I knew I should have grabbed tissues because I knew I was going to cry a lot, but
it's okay.
Move through it. Yeah. We are. But so yeah, and basically in December, so they passed in February 2017. In December 2017, I was still drinking and I had a psychotic breakdown from alcohol. I was on and off meds, so I wasn't taking them correctly, and I was just it really made me actually have a psychotic break. I was not okay. I was at a work party and drinking and got to a point, and anyway, I went out of control, punching things, hurting myself, hurting others, hurting walls, hurting this, hurting that. I wake up so traumatized from that night alone, right? Of just like, I didn't even remember what was happening. So it was very scary. It was extremely scary for the people in my life, specifically Rex, who was living with me at that time, my sibling and friends. And KSB, that hit me. That was like, holy shit, okay, I can't keep living like this, Again, I'd chosen life many times, right? I'd had many moments of life where I had to choose myself, but this time I had to choose to stop escaping the life that I had to confront, and so it was time. It was time for me to choose myself, and that's what I did, and I actually haven't drinking since then. So that was my last drink, was that break in 2017. So that feels incredible. I'm really proud of myself and excited that I have chosen that path for myself. And honestly, that opened up a path of my highest dreams. I mean, through that journey, I have, we can talk so much more in depth, but have learned how to move through grief, learned how to disidentify, as we were kind of talking about earlier, with depression. So taking it off so that I don't have to become it and be so consumed and think that it is who I am, right? And allow it to just be an experience that I have at times that can move through me, right? And I had to learn that feelings weren't something that I actually had to avoid. Like they actually weren't going to kill me, and that's what I learned. I was like, wow, they actually didn't kill me. I just had to allow myself the gift of going through the wave and trusting myself that I can get through that wave, and then figuring out the supports that I need around me in order to get through that wave, And so life continues to be that way. Life continues to be waves and hard and difficulties, and the depression comes up and, heartbreaks and different stuff that completely have derailed my life. But I've chosen myself time and time again, over and over again. And it was that commitment that I made at 13 years old, crying on the floor in desperation to live, that kept me here today. And I think it was also, there's a lot of spiritual aspects that saved my life as well. And truly energy healing, right? Reiki has saved my life, and it has taught me flow, and it has taught me harmony, and has taught me I can really move through anything, right? We can and we will get through anything that comes our way. And it was that choosing of myself that did everything for me. And there's so many other, details of my story, but that's kind of what has brought me to where I am today. And I'm here and I've moved through it. And I'm excited to share the gifts and the medicine and the wisdom that I've learned along the way with others, and help them find their own wisdom and medicine within themselves and within their journey, because it's unique for us all. I can't, go necessarily and teach someone the wisdom they're meant to have, because we're meant to experience it for ourselves. And that's what I hope to do, is empower people to trust in their journey and trust in themselves and create a true loving relationship with themselves, so that they can learn how to respond to life in a way that brings them true fulfillment and happiness. And we all are deserving of that.
Well, oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing your story and thank you for choosing you, right? Thank you for deciding at that young age that you were going to choose to still be here. Like, so freaking powerful. And the first thing that comes to my mind is I listen to a lot of Abraham Hicks. So I don't
Yes.
know.
Yes.
So to me, it just seems like a lot of choosing the path of least resistance, where we kind of label these things as bad or think that we're doing something that we shouldn't be doing. But what happens is if we choose the path of least resistance, which for you it was not feeling at the time, right? You didn't have
Right.
the coping mechanism, or you not even you chose coping mechanisms that allowed you to choose the path of least resistance because you didn't know how to process emotion. And this is something that I think is so key for people to understand, is that emotions aren't going to kill us, right?
Right.
They're not going to kill
We're
us.
not.
And when we choose to utilize substance and or whatever, sex,
Yep.
drugs, I don't care,
Oh,
Instagram,
it's all a
people,
substance.
whatever. Yeah,
Right.
whatever you're
Yeah.
choosing, when you decide to stop using, you are definitely going to feel like I had in one of my past guests, she was an alcoholic and she's like, I didn't realize once I stopped drinking how much shit I didn't deal with and how much I was going to feel. Right. And so it's like so fascinating because to me, it sounds like you chose the path of least resistance, which was drinking and using and all these things, so that you could make it to the point that
Right.
you could learn how to feel. And so it's like letting go of that judgment on yourself
Mhm.
for choosing the path of least resistance, right? Because that's really the way I look at it, is it was truly the path of least resistance. And for me, that feels so much better than blaming and shaming ourselves for doing something that is bad or wrong, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I definitely felt so ashamed of being depressed. I felt so
Mhm.
ashamed of drinking, of the different criminal activity I did at times that just was completely not who I was. It was all taking me further and further away from myself and from my
Mm.
character and from my truth, from my authentic heart within, and it was like I kept having to come back and one, reminding myself of my truth and my authentic heart, and two, just allowing myself to see all those experiences as purposeful and as
Mhm.
meaningful and as something that taught me. I mean, like, I think that the pains that we go through often become the gifts that we are able to share with other people, right? It becomes the thing. You are a trauma coach, right? Like,
Mhm.
you are expertise in trauma now because of experiences you've been through. I'm the same way, right? It's like I was so called to do trauma work, and especially work that focused around people coming to terms with their experiences and how they actually feel about them, and that
Mm.
there is a pathway to move through that so that the feeling doesn't consume you, but it becomes an honoring, right? It becomes an
Yeah.
honoring of the experience that one went through so that you can kind of nurture and love and reparent yourself, because that's something we often didn't, many of us at least that have experienced trauma or just gone through different things in life, didn't get to experience that in the way that we deserved from the caretakers that we had, that we were supposed to trust that they were going to love us,
Mm.
right? And so it's like I've had to learn a path of giving that love back into myself, right? So that then I can truly find my harmony and my peace and being able to come to terms with the experiences that I've had, right? And that was a
Yeah.
forgiveness piece too for myself, of opening my heart to forgiveness of maybe choosing a path that could have killed me, right? Like,
Mhm.
I did many drugs and things that really I could have died many, many, many times, right?
Mm.
And so I had to forgive myself for some choices, but it was also an honoring of like, wow, I see why that choice gave me this certain medicine or wisdom or experience that was purposeful for me to have out of it, and now let me love that experience, right? Let me love
Yeah.
experience instead of shaming that experience. And that is something I've had to do a lot in my life. And even recently, when I started my business 3 years ago ish or something, I honestly felt a little pushed into it by a friend in a loving way. Like, she was amazing and she was just doing her thing, you know, and she's like, you're a coach, like, just call yourself a coach. You are one, like, go do it. And it was that theory of like, you know, stop holding yourself back, just go be it, you know. And I already had a lot of skill personally with it. So I was like, okay, I can do this. And it's one of those things where you judge yourself as a coach because you're like, okay, well, if I'm not perfectly healed, then how can I help someone else? Right. So there was so much resistance for me to even share my gifts, you could say, or my experiences with other people, because I was judging myself and I was shaming myself for what I haven't healed yet, or what hasn't been fully embodied yet, or whatever it is. Right. So I actually was holding myself back on my path out of shame and judgment and blame to myself of like, oh, well, you're not going to be a good enough coach then, you know. And I had to really come to terms with, I think that the point there was for me was like, through this last 3 years, there was a purpose to me taking less time with clients and a bit more time for myself. You know, I've shared with you the heartbreak that I went through. That heartbreak also, that was 2.5 years ago, that also related to losing like 4 friendships that I had had for 15 years. They still exist on this earth, but I had to stop being friends with those people because of this person and the heartbreak. And it was this whole thing. And through that journey, I had to learn how to feel all over again. You know, I had to learn how to get so fucking uncomfortable in my body and in myself, but allowing it and just saying, okay, yeah, it's gonna fucking feel like this, you know, like I'm gonna feel. You kind of said something like noticing the vibrations in your body and the sensations as you're feeling an emotion, right? Outside of the podcast, you were saying that to me, and it's exactly that. And that's exactly what I have to go through now, of this process of just honoring, like, what am I feeling? How is it processing through me? How is it moving through me? And the fact that I can get through it. And I can tell you, it was like the depths of pain with this heartbreak, you know? And so it was like, I'd gotten through the worst. I had gotten through Brett's death. I had gotten through suicide attempts at young ages, right? I was like, how can I not get through this heartbreak? Like, I know I can. And I think that the things that feel the most impossible, I think that we all have ability to get through them as we keep choosing ourselves and showing up for ourselves and honoring the emotion that just needs to be felt. And that was the biggest lesson for me, is like, it just needs to be felt. I don't need to make it look pretty. It doesn't need to sound pretty. I don't need to give it a philosophy around it. Like, okay, I'm going to feel this so that now I can feel better. Like, no, I'm just going to fucking feel. I'm sad today. I'm angry right now. I'm whatever, you know? And that has so much power in it, because then we're not trying to mask it. We're not trying to disidentify it. We're not trying to repress it or anything, right? And we're actually honoring it, because I think that when we honor our shadows, there's a greater embodiment and kind of unity and union that happens within our being as we honor it, rather than shaming it, saying, no, like, I don't want you, right? Kill the ego. No, become friends with the ego. Like, the ego is a part of you, right? Your emotions are a part of you. Become friends with them. So I'm trying to have a completely different relationship now with feelings, and it's completely transformed my life in the last many years, but even that last 3 that I've made this real embodiment of that. And I think that idea of holding 2 things at once is really important and was pivotal for me. So it's like, yeah, sometimes I need to just hold the depression that I'm feeling, the sadness that I'm feeling, the currently or recently it was heartbreak that I was feeling, right? Whatever it was, or a desire to not be on earth, whatever it is, I can hold that. I can honor that. I can nurture it. I'm going to do all the loving things, and I'm going to be honest with it. I'm going to be authentic with, this is how I feel. I'm not going to excuse it. I'm not going to placate it, whatever. It's just how I feel. And with joy and with love and with happiness and with positivity in my life and with opportunity and optimism and belief. My spirituality lives here, you know, all of it. It's like, and these 2 things aren't separate parts of me. I like to see them as like a woven whole of who I am, right? And so I can open to whatever side I need to open to at different times. Maybe the sadness I need to feel a little extra today because it's just in my body. And then maybe I actually need a really lighthearted practice after that so that I can kind of show up to a client session or show up to a work day or something like that, right? And so there's such a beautiful, divine, magical dance, really, like a sacred dance between feeling and being in the depths and allowing yourself to feel the light at the same time, right? And honoring.
Yeah. Well, they coexist, number one. And number two, it's like, just because you feel like contrast doesn't mean that you can't feel both of the emotions. And so what I've noticed is within myself and within most people is we spend our lives, number one, thinking that we're not supposed to feel bad, which is like so fascinating because we live in this human experience. And when I heard it first from the instructor from the life coach school, Brooke Castillo, that life is 50-50, 50% good, 50% bad, meaning like 50% good emotions, 50% bad emotions. And it's never going to change. It doesn't matter how much healing you do, how much things you learn, like it's never going to change no matter how wealthy you get. Like your life is always going to be 50-50. And so what happens is most people spend the majority of their life resisting the 50% of negative emotion, which then feels like you're experiencing even more negativity because you're resisting 50% of your life. And so for me, when I learned how to feel my emotions, it's like, okay, if I can feel all emotions, I know I am living this human experience. And so like the power of and is so beautiful, right? I can feel sad and I can be grateful at the same time, right? Like I could be sad about something and still feel grateful for the rest of my life that's going on. And I think really learning how to feel, because most people don't know how to feel. They think they know how to feel, but the reality of it is they are resisting the feeling, so they're not processing it. So like sadness, anger, depression, all the things, we think we shouldn't be feeling them, so we don't feel them. We stuff them down, which then creates like an underlying feeling of them being present all the time versus like feeling is actually an action step that you have to do. It's a choice. So we think that feeling is just like something that occurs. No. We have to actually choose to feel and honor the emotions and process the emotions. And most kids are not taught that, right? So we think something is wrong with us. We cry, we're like, no, go over there, go in your room, like you don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like it's just
societal conditioning of
100%
should just not feel anything.
Programming, right? Which is so detrimental and I believe has contributed to like the whole like mental health crisis, is because so many people believe that they shouldn't feel negative emotion. And it's just not true. Like the likelihood is like if someone passes away and you loved them, you want to feel sad. Do you want to feel happy that they passed away? Probably not. Like you actually want to feel sad. And there are times that you want to remember them and feel joy and all that. But like you want to feel sad about that. And so to think that you shouldn't feel sad or angry is kind of crazy. Like literally when you think about it. Yeah, like it's impossible. It literally is.
Right.
100%.
And what you were saying too about grief too, I think that we have created a culture in grief in society to not feel grief, and that you should be over it by a certain amount of time, right? And that you should be able to get out of your bed and be normal by a certain amount of time, and that nobody should be checking in on you after a certain amount of time because you should be fine. And I learned how damaging and detrimental that culture is to our society and what it is perpetuating in this world to create other people to think that, oh, I can't experience this because I'm supposed to be over it by now, right? And I think that I always tried to make people feel better, right? That was my MO when I wasn't feeling anything, right? It was like, let me get you to feel better, right? And I was actually pretty good at it because I had these philosophies and a lot of compassion in my heart, but I missed the complete point of feeling, right? Like it was like whoever I was helping, I hope they felt it because man, I was not advising that. But you know, it was like that was what was necessary. And so I learned through grief that we're often the way that we show up to support people is to try to help them feel better, right? That's our natural MO.
Yes.
And that makes sense. Of course we want to help people feel better. Like our family member, we love them. We see them sad. We want to help them feel better. And that's what I noticed is that a lot of people, either the way that they supported me or even the way I supported other people, it was that goal to get them to feel better. And what that lacked was just sitting there with them in their pain and in their shit and being there with them, knowing that they weren't alone and that someone was supporting them. Because when I continued to try to make somebody feel better, what that did is it repressed the most vulnerable part within themselves because they didn't feel safe to share it because they thought they just had to feel better. They try to match what you're trying to give, right? That's just natural as humans. It's like, oh, I want you to feel better. So you're going to pretend that you feel better probably because that's what I want you to feel. Or you're not going to be in your most authentic expression because I'm so focused on you feeling better rather than on you feeling whatever you're feeling that is necessary for that person's healing or whatever it is. And so I've tried to kind of change the way that I support people a bit, whether that's in my personal life or in even the client connections. Because it's like sometimes people just need somebody to hold them in the shit and just to say, you're okay and I'm here for you and you're going to get through this without having to say, let me do something to make you feel better. Sometimes we need that too, right? We sometimes we need somebody to send us a funny gif when we're feeling sad so that we can have some lightness. So again, it's holding two things at once, right? But it's making sure we're not ignoring that part where we just want to support other people and be by their side. And I like to think of it sometimes as like sitting on a bench. And so you're sitting on the bench and you have your sadness or you have your grief or whatever it is on the bench with you, right? And then your friend comes and sits with you on that bench too, right? So it's like you're all just loving and supporting and feeling the outward care of someone else in a way that doesn't mean you have to change your current experience that you're having. Why are we trying to change other people's experiences in a way that is actually repressing what they're experiencing, right?
Totally. Well, it's number one, it's called holding space, right? We hold space for ourselves and for people because that's literally what we're doing. We're holding space for that emotion. And the thing is when we think that we shouldn't experience negative emotion, then we don't think other people should. And one of the biggest gifts that I have ever given myself and am now able to give other people is I don't believe that they shouldn't be experiencing anything that they've experienced. They shouldn't feel anything that they're feeling. And like, I also believe that I have no pity for anybody in their story. Like, I don't care if someone is telling me that they have been like, literally, I've had someone tell me that they have been like gang raped and beat up. And I don't believe that that shouldn't have happened to them because it happened. I believe that this is experiences that we have here on earth, and you're going to have so many emotions about it. And I can sit there with you and hold you and your emotions without trying to make you feel better about it, because I've learned to do that for myself, right? And I think that is like, it's a really hard concept for a lot of people to understand. But I mean, me, myself experiencing sexual abuse, me, myself being emotionally abused, me, myself feeling, being kind of neglected in some aspects, and all of the different things that I have experienced, I don't believe any of those experiences shouldn't have happened because they happened. And I don't know if you know who Byron Katie is, but so she has a whole book called Loving What Is. And she says, like, every time you resist reality, you lose 100% of the time, right? Because we think that things that have happened shouldn't have happened. And that's part of my healing framework, is never resist the reality of what is, because when we think that something shouldn't have happened, that happened, we create a ton of emotion behind it versus this happens. And are there shitty things that happen in the human experience that you wouldn't wish upon someone to happen? 110%. But thinking that something shouldn't have happened, or thinking that we shouldn't feel negative emotion, or thinking that someone shouldn't be going through what they're going through, it does nobody any service. But if you can sit there with them, not get emotionally invested in their, shit, because that doesn't feel good either. Like if then you both are just sitting in the shit, and then you both smell the shit and feel like shit and all the things. But if they're sitting in shit and you could be like, with a little like candle and just like hugging them, you both can
gotta have the candle.
like be the light while they are in that space, knowing that they can be in that space. And I would always say it's from a place of good intention that we want to make someone feel better. But also, it's such, like, you realize it is such a disservice to try and make someone feel better when they just need to feel. And then they'll get better at feeling, and then innately they'll feel better in the end.
Well, and I think that we've created this culture of not supporting people in the way that you just described, because we're all afraid to feel uncomfortable, right? We don't want to feel uncomfortable. We resist discomfort at all costs, right? I tried to do it at 13. It didn't work. But it's like, when we're supporting someone else, and this is anybody, this is not just a coach supporting, but just a person supporting a person, right? I think that we often feel uncomfortable when someone else is sad or upset or angry. So we actually try to solve our own discomfort by making the other person feel better. So if I can make Katie feel better, then I don't have to feel so uncomfortable right now, because they're really fucking uncomfortable that she's having all these emotions and I don't know what to do with it. But what if we equipped ourselves differently as a society, as a culture, as a humankind, and said, I'm going to learn to be uncomfortable with someone else's feeling. And I'm actually going to learn to sit with them in it. Exactly like you're saying, not taking it on as in like an empathic type of like energetic taking it on. You don't want to do that, but sitting with them in it, right? Not having to make it all feel better, but just honoring that they're in that and you're going to be in that next to them, right? With them, supporting them, holding them. And that through that, you're actually both getting a breakthrough, right? Both the person that's receiving support and giving support is getting a breakthrough, because you just got to move through so much discomfort and you saw yourself shift out of it. And that is the key, right? Is allowing yourself to both get to that point, but also have awareness of that point of like, okay, I was in the shit, and then I felt it enough, and then I shifted out of it. And wow. And that shows you like, okay, wait, I will shift out of things. And then it shows other people, okay, I can just sit there with someone else's discomfort and it will shift out, right? And the goal is not to make that shift. The goal is what needs to be honored and nurtured and held and loved, and what space, sacred, safe space needs to be created for the self or the person or for whoever it is that is needing that support, right? And of course, we do that within ourselves first so that we can then give that out to other people, right? And I think that helps us become more human and more evolved, right? And I think for so long, I'm such a spiritual person, and so I totally am on the same vibe as you. Is like, I kind of subscribe to everything's meant to be, but with an understanding that philosophy doesn't always vibe, and that often even just having purpose and meaning, right, is kind of the point behind that philosophy, right? And so I'm very spiritual, and for so long I was like, cool, as long as I can just like maintain all these like high astral travel spiritual like crazy activations I'm having, then I don't have to deal with the human stuff, And it was like, that was not a path that actually brought me to my true embodiment of who I am and the happiness in my life. And I also learned that I have to, you kind of said loving what is, right? Like I have to find gratitude for what is and how my life is right now, or I can never guarantee happiness for myself. Because if I can't be happy with who I am, what I am, how my life is, exactly how it is formed right at this moment, then who's to say I'm going to be happy after all my dreams or goals or this or that gets fulfilled? Who's to say? Nobody knows. Then I'm always striving for something, right? And my happiness is always outside of me then, instead of my happiness being from within, created from within, maintained from within, and the foundation is always within me, right? And I think that that has been like a pivotal part of my path of creating a foundation within me, right? And so my foundation that has kind of helped me survive and now thrive, right? Because for a while it was survival. Now I'm thriving, girl. I'm living life and I'm so happy, right? And it's like, as I'm even going through a lot of hard shit, right? But I've really had to help myself create a foundation. And for me, that foundation exists. And it's what I teach too. It exists for me of self-love, of peace, right? Like, how do I create peace in my life? Of empowerment for myself. So like this belief, this confidence, I will get through these things. I am empowered. I'm a sovereign being. I'm limitless. And spirituality, right? Having some form, at least for me, and that doesn't have to be something that works for everybody, but it really works for me, some divine connection to myself, to this life, and some higher purpose of it all, right? Whatever that means. And sure, there's little other things that get mixed into that foundation too, right? With the allowing myself to feel, finding harmony and balance with that, but like creating that foundation within me. And I'm very into your energy centers, right? So that's your chakras, or you have plenty of energy centers and meridians in your body, but those main 7 chakras, the root chakra is your bottom chakra, right? And to me, and it's red, and it's like your foundation, really, right? And to me, I've really built all of these philosophies, energies, embodiments into that root chakra, into my foundation, so that no matter how I'm moving through life, I always know that that foundation exists within me, where I love myself wholeheartedly, unconditionally, unapologetically, and nobody can take that from me, because that's the greatest gift I've ever given myself, and that any of us could ever give ourselves. I could do a whole podcast on self-love, because sure you can too, right? And so it's like that unapologetic knowing within me, and that commitment to myself of loving myself, has taken me everywhere. And with that peace and empowerment, all those other aspects, right? It's like I can be pretty much happy wherever I go, wherever I'm at, because my centered, current, present foundation is always harmonious and solid, and I can trust myself, right? I have a deep trust for myself. And so I think that that has been really powerful for me as I've learned to move through the different traumas that come through life. We were talking about how you kind of can't ever get rid of, you can't ever say it's something bad's not going to happen, right? It's like the 50-50 thing, like you were saying, right? And it's like, shit's going to happen still, right? And now I have created a space that my happiness is not outside of me. My happiness is not only if I get through that thing, it's my happiness is always here within me. And I've developed that, created that. And that has been infinitely sacred and beautiful, and like the best thing I could have done for myself. So
yeah. I mean, I resonate with that so much, right? Is like we are taught that happiness and everything that we should be feeling is outside of ourselves. That is like a programmed thing. You made so and so feel this way. Get the job, you'll feel this way. Get the marriage, the kids, yada yada yada, whatever it is. And it's like, this is why you see people that are extremely successful committing suicide, is they think that it is something outside of themselves that they need to feel happiness. And what it is creating that foundation of love, understanding that you can trust yourself by allowing yourself to feel all of your emotions, by trusting yourself not to judge yourself and turn your back on yourself when you show up in a way that you don't like. As coaches, as people that have been healers, as people that have healed themselves, we hold ourselves to a standard sometimes of not being human. And I find myself doing that, right? Where I'm like, oh, I should know better, or I should be doing better, or whatever. And it's like, no. Coming from a place of unconditional love means that you see yourself in all of your humanness, the
Mhm.
parts of you that you love, the parts of you that you don't like so much that you want to change, and still love yourself, still accept yourself, don't judge yourself. And that's something that I've also figured out within myself, is like, when I don't judge myself for the behaviors that I don't like, not that I don't take ownership.
Right.
Yes, take ownership so I can change. But you know who doesn't feel judged by other people? Me, because I'm not judging myself. And if other people are judging me, it's none of my fucking business, right? But we're all so concerned about how everyone else is making us feel. They're judging us, they're not loving us, and all of that is actually coming from the lack of, love from within, or the harsh judgment that we have on ourselves. And so it's like, for me, the truest form of healing and what it means to be healed is finding that unconditional love for yourself, building that trust with yourself, knowing that no matter how much shadow work, how much light you have shed on these traumas, that there may be a time where it's like, I'm here, look at me. And then you're like, oh shit, okay, I know you, I've seen you before, and I'm not going to judge you, I'm not going to shame you, but I'm going to hold space for you, and I'm going to allow you to be there, and I'm going to allow myself to process this and utilize all these wonderful tools and all of the things that I have built over the years to get me through this. And I think that like, for me, is what true healing is. It's not like I'm never going to experience something that creeps up from this past experience. It's how am I going to handle it when it does?
How am I going to respond? Right. What tools do I have that I can now respond with? Right.
Yes.
As you develop them over time. Exactly. And I think that God, that creation of self-love was such a beautiful journry for me, and such a hard one. And honestly, and it's an ongoing, it happens every day, that I show up to it and I choose loving myself every single day. And we will have to choose that every day. Right. And that's what I realized. It started with a willingness, because self-love did not come easy at first. I had plenty of reasons to shame myself and, judge myself and hate myself. It was very much a hatred when I was 13. And a lot of us have that, right? We've developed that over time for many reasons, right? One, it could be because of how people reflected themselves to us, right? Our parents maybe were harsh on us, mean to us, whatever it was. So then we take that on as, oh, okay, then I have to look at myself that way. I have to be mean and harsh to myself, whatever it is, right? A million reasons why we develop that depth of dislike or disdain or hatred within. And God, what a miraculous journey it's been, Katie, to just choose loving myself. And it started with that willingness. It started with, everything is a willingness for me, even to this day. If I'm like, I don't want to do this thing, I just have to ask myself, am I willing? I don't want to get through this hard journey or whatever it is, or I don't want to show up to this practice today. Am I willing? And for so many years, I had to just keep asking myself, am I willing to love myself? Am I willing? And sometimes you have to start there, right? Because you have to develop that willingness within yourself and choose to be willing to keep choosing yourself, right? Because it's not going to stop. And once I had that willingness, it was then a commitment of consistency and keep showing up, right? So sometimes the self-love wasn't present in life, right? There wasn't something for me to go, okay, cool, because that's happening, I can love myself. Often a ton of shit was happening around me. There was a ton of reasons to not like myself maybe happening around, or ways that I would perceive it as something to judge myself for, right? And so I had to choose that, even if it wasn't present as something I could say, okay, that's present, so now I can lean into that self-love, I had to choose it, no matter if it was present or not, no matter if there was an example of what it looked like in my life or not, no matter if it felt like possible that day or not. I just had to keep saying, I choose this. And I think for me, affirmations is one of the most life-changing things that I have utilized as a tool. I still highly recommend it to this day. Through all of the ins and outs I've been through, it is one of the main tools that still is so effective for me. And I don't believe that affirmations are toxic positivity positivity. I don't believe it should be utilized that way, right? To me, affirmations is not to ignore the experience that you're having. It is a different activity from feeling, right? Feeling is one activity, and processing, going through that is one activity, and then a different activity is affirmations, right? So both of that needs to be happening at once. Otherwise, it can be toxic positivity, right? And I think that oftentimes when people start with an affirmation, they don't believe it. So they're like, how the fuck can I say this to myself if I don't believe it? I'm just lying to myself. And I hear that so often, right? And I'm thinking like, actually, you're just telling yourself the truth of who you are, right? Outside of all of the reflections that you've been given by people in your life or by your experiences in your life. Those were all reflections. Those actually weren't your truth. So if you come back to what your truth really is, those affirmations are actually true. They just don't feel that way. So that's okay that they don't feel that way. For some people, they use neutral affirmations. I have a body. I exist. I'm a person, right? To get to a better place within themselves before kind of moving into that extreme belief, right? But I think we all have that capability to get into that belief of I am lovable. I am loving, lovable, and loved. I am a beautiful, powerful, limitless person. I am capable of moving through my pain and creating purpose from it, right? And creating meaning from it and creating a life that we desire, right? And so I think that through that subconscious reprogramming, because that's really what it is, right? We have taken on a narrative that's actually not true. If any of us are feeling negative and hateful to ourselves, it is not a true narrative. It is something that got created through whatever it was, even if it was our own action. We don't actually have to hate ourselves just because we made an action that's not in alignment for us. We actually can honor ourselves, forgive ourselves for that action, and find healing and move on and realize that that affirmation still is true. That you're loving, lovable, and loved, even when you made that mistake or did that thing or whatever it was. And so that has been like monumental for me in my self-love journey of choosing it, showing up to it. And no matter if I can believe it or not, no matter if there is a reflection of it in the world or not, I'm going to choose it. And that's changed my whole entire life.
I love that. And I think like with the affirmations, like, yeah, it could be toxic positivity if you're not really doing it in a way where you actually believe it. But like, I love actually coupling that I am willing, like I am willing to find places where I am lovable, or I am willing to believe this in the future, or I'm willing to work on believing this. Like there are ways to do affirmations where it's not just like if you hate your fucking body and you think you're fat and you're ugly, like to say like I am beautiful and not absolutely believe it, that could be challenging for you, right? Like that could be in a space
not as
that
effective,
right? But I am willing to I am willing to work on loving myself. I am willing to work on believing that one day I'm beautiful. I am willing, willing to do these things. Such a different experience. Oh my gosh.
That gap between that resistance and that embodiment. Right.
100%.
It's like in between resistance and embodiment is willingness, hands down.
Yes, I love that.
Like to show up to your journey. And I think that when we choose to be willing, magical things happen. Magical things. Think of the energy of not being willing. You are resistant. Something feels forced, right? You don't want to do it. Feel that energy inside of you right now. It's like, right? It feels so fucking tense. Like, of course you don't want to do anything. Of course you're actually now you have all these symptoms in your body that you're gonna try to avoid and watch some entertainment on TV so that you can forget about that symptom, or drink some coffee to forget about that symptom, or drink some alcohol or this, that, right? All the things that we choose in order to placate the sensations that we're having in our body, right? Rather than being aware of that and saying, that's tension. That's resistance. Maybe I can see what's beyond this resistance. And so when you can honor that resistance is there and say, I'm willing to move beyond resistance, I'm willing to have a conversation with resistance. What does resistance want to say to me? What is it trying to tell me right now? What is it teaching me? Because there's always a lesson within the resistance, right? It's not about ignoring it and saying, just put it to the side and get over it. That's not helpful at all. Like you're saying, for that person who's trying to believe that they're beautiful in their body, it wouldn't be helpful to say, say, I don't care about your resistance, just believe it, right? It's like, no. You might have to open to some willingness even to believe something is possible to be true. And that's where the magic and the power happens, is in that claiming of your willingness. I claim that I am willing to open myself to loving myself. Doesn't have to even happen right now, but I'm open to it and I'm allowing that experience. What energy does that feel like? Open and expansive, right? Like my chest started opening up when I was saying that, right? And like the sun is shining even brighter as I say it right now. It's kind of amazing. Like you really open to a different energy, right? That energy of that tight resistance we were feeling versus that open, that willingness, like universe, show me the way, you know, show me the opportunities, because I'm open and I am willing and I'm choosing them. I don't even know how they're going to happen. It still feels impossible, but I'm willing to see. I'm willing to be surprised. I'm willing to allow a miracle in my life. Right?
I love that. Like I love that. Just the willingness. I feel like that's such like a good note to even end on, is like the willingness, right? Like just being so willing to experience life, willing to experience feelings, willing to experience like expansiveness and change, and willing to go through life as a human and not try to be, so uber spiritual where we're living in the clouds, because we're not supposed to be there yet. Like we have plenty of time for that too, it's like a good balance. And so I love that. The willingness portion is so huge, because I think that we have to be willing to see another perspective. We have to be willing to do something different than we are currently doing if we want to change. And that is
comfort. And I had to be willing when I was 13 years old and chose myself and chose to live. I had to be willing to live.
Right.
And that everything.
Yeah, so huge. So before we go, I always ask my guests, what do you want to name this episode? What do you think would be a good name for this episode to describe it? So,
I don't even know. Either willingness to live or willingness to love. Something about willingness, I think, is perfect.
Willingness to live. Do you want to do willingness to live, or do you want to do, let's see, willingness to live, willingness to love, willingness
to, like, tell me podcast titler. I'm not not used to
titling. What about willingness to experience the human experience?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Just because I feel like that's it. Like we're like, let's do it. Like, let's experience this human experience, which encompasses all of it.
Yeah, not just the joys and not just the depths, right?
Yeah, all of it.
We are all of it. We are the light and the shadow, and we're not meant to get rid of any part of that. We're actually meant to alchemize and embody it all as one whole, because then we're not shaming a piece of us and only loving a part of us. You're actually loving all of us, right? We're loving all of who we are. And that is what is so critical in this life, right? Is just honoring all of our experience. Like you, listener, whoever, are beautiful and perfect exactly as you are, and you are empowering yourself on this journey because you're willing to open up and expand and choose a new way of life and choose a new way of loving yourself. And I'm just proud of everyone that is here and on this journey with you, Katie, and I'm proud of you and all that you are sharing in this world. It's so incredible to be a part of, and I'm proud of myself. Self-love moment, right? We should be proud of ourselves, and just grateful. And I kind of just want to hold my heart space for a moment with you and everyone listening, and just feeling that love, that within ourselves, that connection within ourselves, that gratitude for who we are and that we're here right now in this moment. You have arrived here, placed on purpose, in love, in willingness, in an openness to experience a brand new way of life that brings more happiness and fulfillment than we've ever experienced before. Thank you. Loving everyone.
And I want to say thank you for joining me today, for sharing your story, for being a light in this world, in a space where you are willing to be vulnerable and to experience this human experience and be willing to go to the depths so that you can help others and not fall into the toxic positivity and forgive yourself to allow yourself to be the radiant light that you are. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for making that vow to yourself to live, because not only are you needed on this earth, but you sharing that will hopefully inspire others to make that vow to themselves, because even in the darkest of times, we have light to offer this world, and you are absolutely an example of that. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for that, and for just being you.
Thank you. Receiving that fully into my heart. Goodness, you're making me cry. Out of joy, out of gratitude. Thank you. And a reverence, right? I think there's a deep reverence that we can honor in this human experience of what we've come through and what we've been through and where we are right now. And what a magical gift that we're all here right now. And what a reverence that we can give ourselves for all that we've gotten through and the beautiful light that we all have to shine in this world. So thank you, Katie.
Yes.
You are so gorgeous. I love you. I adore you. And just thank you for this honor to be with you.
Thank you so much. I love you too, and I appreciate you.
Definitely.